Well, as we enter the October 39 turn, this was a terrible year to declare war. The weather rolls, even worse, severe weather in the mild zone. I didn't think that would be possible here in October. I'm not sure quite what it means. Normally you'd think severe means kind of like a heavy winter or something. That seems pretty odd, but maybe it's just really, really rainy and muddy. So this is really going to turn against the invasion in Poland and probably spell doom for any German chances of winning the overall game. To have, the bad weather, the poor weather to begin with that failed taking it, enough severe weather that's going to make it miserable. It's kind of an interesting thought that, delaying might have helped Hitler, and had he had bad weather in September that was obviously going to be bad, his army might have convinced him, look, we can't do the invasion right now. Can we wait till spring? Can we, games never allow you to play that out. Just get a freebie of the nature of, I don't. This one actually would, but it's not going to be a freebie because still the policy of the tensions is going to bring these reinforcements into place. I still have questions about the Russian reinforcements now. Are all delayed to the extent that like Barbarossa is going to happen. The U.S. reinforcements in almost every game are scheduled, and this one included, on the basis of the U.S. entry date. Well, to some extent, the Russian reinforcements would be modified by this, and I talked about that earlier. And likewise, Germany might have been building up for a war, but they weren't building up full steam until the war started. They didn't push themselves into the full atmosphere. So, kind of, it's hard. It's hard in a game with this kind of focus to capture the reality of what would it be like if you delayed a year or delayed 6 months or something for your attacks. A game like Europa Universalis covers that better, and with Days of Decision actually gives you some better opportunities to play that out. And maybe expansions will eventually give this. Anyway, we jump past the declaration of war phase. The Russians ain't going to declare war on anyone, Germans aren't going to declare war on anyone, and the Western Allies cannot. I was wrong in something. There is no three-sided game here. It's designed for one player per faction, 3-faction game, but the Allies win or lose together. So there is absolutely nothing wrong in terms of any level of this, although I would do the same in Third Reich or in WIF, where you do have victory conditions by the alliances. Yeah, so like the Russians can win a game over the British. There's absolutely nothing wrong with what the Allies did in terms of hurting their chances of victory by helping the Soviets get a better chance at getting this pro-Soviet marker in here. Okay, so we're on the economy phase, and remember, it's use it or lose it, which means all these points over here skip away, and then we just go through the recounting. We are not going to have strategic war yet because we still haven't invaded the East. This is, again, certain games have this ability, WIF does definitely, of a sort of limited war in Poland of this nature, where Russia ends up, I think WIF does, ends up supporting Poland and it not really going into the full world war for a long time. And that's kind of what we're seeing develop here. So we won't be seeing any strategic warfare. And, I'll jump in as the operations phase move. It's going to be ugly with the weather modifiers, though. The severe weather is going to mean units defending in or attacking a unit in a hex affected by severe weather have their die rolls halved. Now, have the total value of their combat rolls halved. That means we're not going to get extreme results very often because both people are going to be moving towards the low end of the table here. You're not going to be seeing things up here. So you know, whatever that ends up working out as. I don't think we're going to get 7 points of Polish will burned away easily under those conditions. But maybe over the course of the fall, we'll eventually win the Schlagkrieg against Poland. I wanted to take a little moment because one of the defining principles that Sal seems to have put forward in this game is that it's the political situation at the beginning of the war was very chaotic. It was very uncertain how things would fall out. You know, whether people would stand up for Poland, but more than that in some ways. And I feel like this game actually is begging not to be starting in September of 39, but with that emphasis to start maybe in January of 39, to allow things to play out. Now, obviously, hey, you start early enough, maybe the Germans want to launch their war, you know, make their demands earlier than they did historically and stuff like that. So you don't really want to play that out. But it almost seems like there should be something more with that emphasis in the design, because it wasn't in September of 39 where the chaos really hit its peak. I think by September of 39, it was pretty clear that Germany's attacking Poland and the Allies are supporting them. But a little earlier in that year, you do stretch back to where that real chaos starts to come into play. And then there, you know, there's questions like, does Italy enter the war? You know, after their World War I attitude, it is not a guaranteed thing that Italy's best interests are served by that. It's not a guaranteed thing that Mussolini is going to honor any commitments to the Axis, that he might sit out. So I like that there's that level of flexibility in it, that Italy's not just a major power force to come into play. But to some extent, I also feel like some of the other aspects of the game almost ask for a slightly earlier start date to allow some politicking and to give some sort of reason for letting the politics play out till September of 39. Like, you might end up pissing off both Russia and the Western Allies if you're not careful. I don't know. Not to the extent of a whiff or something, not going back to 36 or earlier and looking at the Munich Accords. Taking that as the baseline, but really looking at the year of 1939 as a political element in a little bit more detail, I think would have broken some interesting ground in a game, and ground that the designer has already indicated that he had his eye on in this game. To figure out how I want to handle the German attacks here in Poland. I'm up to that stage. I did a strategic move, shifting a unit from here down to here, just because it lets me get something onto the rail line down there for free in a way that I kind of like, without paying production. I don't know how big a deal that is. It's not like I'm going to run through all those production points. Now, I forgot to do something. In the end of turn phase, these poles should have moved down here. I got those off the map, but not these guys. So, combat's not just affected by the halving of the die rolls. Air power. Air support only works in fair and poor weather. Tanks, the armored bonus, only works in fair or poor weather. There's a lot of things here coming into play that are real penalties. I'm trying to debate, you know, does it matter? Is it going to be more valuable if I perform assaults in here? Or should I try to do a mobile war in this terrible weather? Because I still have the advantage of the +2 for being German. That's not dependent on the weather. Now, once I start facing Soviet units, let's see. Yeah, those aren't going to help either. Those aren't any good. Cool. The elite Soviet units are, obviously, and some of the shock units and stuff like that have bonuses. But this frontline infantry stuff, the early war infantry, that's not going to hold up very well against the Germans. No better than the Poles do. The Poles have been doing their own pretty decent job here. The danger, though, is that I get a really bad result and my armor gets damaged, so I got to kind of think about what my modifiers are going to be. So I have +2 for being German, and that's probably about it, except for maybe if I attack a city, I end up down to +1. So my die roll span, let's say I roll a 2, a 1, that gives me a 2, and the opponent rolls a 6. Well, that gets divided to 1 to 3. And that's really just going to stop me. I'm probably not going to take damage from attacking. Of course, I can improve my odds by doing an assault, though. If I get an attacker stopped, I don't get to keep rolling the dice. But let's say we look at a more even roll, where I roll, say, a 3 and the enemy rolls a 4. Well, I'm going to get a 4 and the enemy's a 4, so it's 2 to 2. I get to keep rolling. And on the good side of things, well, let's see what I can win here. If I roll a 6, that puts me up to, say, a 7, and the enemy rolls a 1. Well, I think I'm, which way is it rounded? Round up. So I'm going to be at a 4 to 1, and that gets me a hex. I don't know. And what about attacking in poor or severe? That's going to be more expensive, so I'm only going to get to make a couple of attacks. So assaults may actually work out better for me here. The problem, of course, is I'm not going to damage the enemy. I'm not going to do real harm to them. Like, I might flip a counter, but who cares? There's still decent Polish production. They lost one factory, but they still have 2 factories doubled as 4 points of production. That's 4 units, 4 step losses that can be taken. Now, there's one that I'm going to be paying for up there to bring that back on. But I think it's pretty unlikely I'm going to do 3 step losses in either type of attack. Mistake I made, these ground support counters, I used, I think the German ones, they can't use them. You're restricted from using it. You can't use it if any of that unit's country have an air or tank ground unit in the whole game. There is German air and tank units. The Russians can't use the ground support either. The Poles can use it. And likewise, if I get a German minor ally, I'm not going to worry too much about it. I'm going to say these were expended, they were extra assets. It's kind of a... Could you throw the extra assets in? Well, what you shouldn't be able to do is throw them in support of an armored or an air support. But anyway, the way the game looks at it is, those are assets that aren't being reflected on the board, and they're minor country assets, essentially, so they're not going to work for these major powers. No big loss at having screwed that up. I started out with an assault on this and flipped it over, and now I'm moving this one and I'm going to launch a mobile attack on that. I'm going to try to destroy a unit, basically. That's kind of my goal for the turn, because there's not a whole hell of a lot I can do. If I can't take a city, which is going to be pretty tough in this weather, I at least want to hurt the morale of the Poles a little bit by killing a unit. Right, and in the end I also managed to take loads, kind of by accident. I didn't realize it was there until I'd already rolled some dice. But I got very lucky and took it anyway with an assault. Then I moved this unit out from here, boink, 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 in order to help protect my border. Not sure how much damage the Poles or Russians could do in terms of pushing through and taking Königsberg. They could force a rebase. Neither of those seems terribly valuable. Now I've got to think, is this where I want my airplanes? That's kind of the last thing I can choose here. Because this one in particular has a step loss, so I probably will be spending to repair it anyway. And I think I'm going to do some quick rebases with at least with this plane here, up the loads. Get me into a closer position. I don't know, was I close enough? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You know, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to do counter air. I think I'm allowed to. I think the combat ends up being the severe weather, so it's less likely to do much of anything. I'm just going to forego the air fight. Do I want to protect this guy? Is he somewhere kind of annoying? You know, I might as well rebase him too. He's not in much danger. I'll leave him there. He's in as good a place as any. And the Western Allies, their move is almost non-existent. I could have done a strategic move, actually, which might make sense. But instead, I'll just move this guy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I gotta get him some room here. Get French down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you know, there's a production cost to that. It's not really that important, and this is going to pay 2 because nobody's going to run out of their production at this point in things, and that's actually kind of the historical positioning there. Yay. The reason it happens is because I don't want to pay to move this unit, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, we'll sit with that. And then I actually have to do this little supply jog here. And I don't think the Germans can intercept, so I'm not going to put anything on the home fleet. And now this is just kind of bookkeeping shit. I could pretty much say, hey, none of that's really important. I'm not going to bother with it. And I'd be just fine with that too, because there isn't much that's going to get bought or paid for this turn. So, you know, I'm picking up this sortie. Now I have to pay it off with $2 or $3, and yeah. That's just factors that this design requires a little bit more fiddly bookkeeping type stuff. Brings up another one of Salvasta's ideas here, which was he wanted this kind of economics and bookkeeping in the game, but he didn't want it to be excessive. I'm not sure whether a whiff or an advanced Third Reich is excessive, but this is certainly lighter in a lot of ways. The only thing that's more extensive is this need to constantly be playing with the production when you're moving. But it's really not that big a burden. You can see, even, you know, I could just abstract it away in some cases. But when we're talking about, you know, where there's actual combat going on, yeah, I think it's a good idea to pay for it, because you know you might get close to your production limit there. It's tough to do, though, at least in these early stages of the war. Maybe later on, once the strategic warfare starts taking effect, starts happening, we're going to start to see nations actually having difficulty paying their bills. Okay, so the Russians and Poles kind of redefined their line, moved some units around the garrison, pulled out of the line, put a Russian regular in, etc. Some rebuilds, German, Poles, bought back used units. I can't move these planes closer to the front because the Russians have to maintain their garrison requirement, and they can't move them. That put us to the diplomacy phase. The Germans drew a card. They drew a political failure, and the Russians chose to knock Italy out of their camp for that. And now we're on the Allies. The Allies get to choose to do something. They're going to throw a political success in so that the Russians have another chance to get that. We've got the points in each case to buy the one political event that we're allowed here. And the Russians get another political success. Yay. I could just throw Romania into the war, and I think that's probably the best thing I can do. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna bring Romania in. And what we're seeing here is the advantage the Allies have by having two players in the game, two factions. The Axis can kind of make up for this by conquering minors. When they conquer minors, what happens is they get to select a country that they get essentially an immediate success in a diplomatic success in a country sharing a land border with the just conquered country, or they can neutralize someone else's effect. And if it's the Axis, they also, I believe, get somewhere or another we get one of these. Maybe I'm missing that. I thought this was how you get the pro-Axis markers into the cup. I'm not seeing that there. But yeah, here, for example, you still do the first two steps. So there's advantages to just conquering these minors in terms of swaying the rest of Europe to fear you, essentially. These special cases, I don't see one there either. So by going east, I'm kind of losing my ability to easily conquer territories. Now, both sides may wish to conquer territories for the political effect that that's going to have. The Russians, however, are busy fighting in Poland. They don't have the extra troops to throw into Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. And they may be able to gain them as allies, you know? I mean, they got Romania as an ally. Now they're going to be pumping Romanian troops into Poland. So there's sort of a mixed, do you want, to gain things through the normal diplomatic procedure, or do you want to gain them by conquering things and swaying other countries over? So the Germans don't really get much from getting Netherlands, Belgium, Denmark, Norway in terms of conquests. They don't get additional production from that, but they do get political pull that they can use elsewhere on the board. And that's what's getting lost here. Now the Allies have this natural political advantage in terms of having two players going here in the diplomacy phase. And as long as they work together and cooperate, and the Allies are willing to keep throwing in political successes, it may go out very, very well for the Russians. And likewise, the political failure, I was pulling this off, and so the Germans pulled a political failure to begin with, which is down here, and they lost Italy because of it. Now, there's a chance factor in this, but the Germans may want to be dropping political failures into the cup rather than taking action simply to try to slow down the ability of the Allies to start convincing more and more countries onto their side for this aggression against Poland. I don't think we have any victory check or anything of that nature, so we go here, we see if anything was destroyed, and we got another Polish unit destroyed that pushes into the mobilization pool. And you can see the Germans aren't doing a whole hell of a lot, but each unit they destroy reduces the Polish will, and it's down to 4 now. That's enough. If I take Warsaw, it's over. Poland collapses, and because I own cities, they surrender. I could also do that by taking 2 smaller cities. There's one down here, Krakow, and I'm kind of running out of them. I guess I could eliminate 2 units, but otherwise there aren't a lot of minor cities available. All right, well, we're on to another turn up here, it looks like. Now more terrible weather, it's just getting worse. It's not bad in the cold zone, it's just poor. You can, use advantages to get poor weather to work out, things like armor, air power. But when it's severe weather, you got nothing. And what we got was a little push by the Germans. I didn't even attack with this. Could hit this, that might be worth taking a shot at because that's got a -2 on it. We'll fire off another production to do that shot. Let's see, that's going to cost me 3 movement points, so I go down to 5. We'll see. I'm at +2 here. That's a reduced unit because it's a garrison. It's at -2, and we'll just see if we get a hit there. That's about as good as it can get. So I've got 4 to 1. It's just a defender retreat, though. and I don't really want to advance. So I wasted a supply point, and that's what I kind of feel like I did all along the line, is I'm finding all of the Polish troops, the best I could do to them was push them out of the space. This one got damaged, actually, because it couldn't retreat. I hit it first, but with an assault, throwing almost all of my units in. And then I didn't really follow up on it by hitting with this armor or something, which could have actually done some good. I don't know. But there is just so little chance of getting any headway in the bad weather. So we'll move on to the Allied turns. You know, I'm just going to abstract these away and say I'm not worried about them. They can pay their maintenance costs, etc., without any problem. I'd rather not fiddle around with that. It's keeping the turns fairly short, you know, like 15 minutes or so, which is pretty good. But I do have to worry about the Soviets and the Poles. The question, of course, is, do I want to just push back in there? Is there any advantage to an attack? Probably not. I'm probably not going to cost anything. Even if I cause casualties and damage a unit, that unit's going to recover right away. The only real question is this the defensive line I want running, you know, along here? And it looks pretty good to me. It doesn't take advantage of any river lines or anything, but it's pretty damn solid, so it's going to be hard to break through easily, especially if I've got some reserves in the back, which I do. I buzzed through the economics phase. I want to give a buck from Russia to Poland. I'm just looking at, geez, if I want to move Polish units, I'm already down to a buck. I've got a buck to replace this, and then a buck to upgrade this guy in the back here. So I want to make sure that I can recover. So we'll do that. Just kind of cheating a little bit, but that's okay. After some mobilization costs, I still couldn't buy everything from Poland. I forgot I had this unit damaged, so I rebuilt that one and this one. Didn't worry about mobilizing that guy there. I don't have the points for that. Of course, that means Romania's points are wasted, but they can't spend them on other people. They can't lend money to people. Or if they can, I don't feel like it. They had to spend their points to move. They only have 2 factories, I think. One if they lose Bessarabia. So, not a lot of movement there. The Reds have moved back up. They did some fighting. No real effect. This poor weather means nothing. On to diplomacy. The Germans threw the failure into the cup. The Allies threw the success into the cup. And then the Russians ended up pulling a no event. Now, those get matched with successes and failures when you throw them into the cup. So, you know, nobody's been drawing them. We also drew one of these area seized markers, but those don't count because Russia's a participant now. So they're not going to be doing the kind of, not really diplomacy, but the occupations that they did historically. They're not allowed to. And that's one of the reasons I took this path. But as you can see with the bad weather, I think I'm doomed no matter. Yeah, I think this is a horrible start no matter what for the Germans, even if the Russians aren't coming in, hitting Poland with bad weather to begin with. I was hoping to knock Poland out in the first couple turns, but it just did not happen. The poor weather on the first turn and then severe since then has really hosed any chances of taking anything. And it's not likely to improve too much, I don't think. We're here, we're going into December, February. It's not going to be good weather until at least March. But, you know, we're tied down in a war now. Not much we can do. A few new units got placed. Let's see. The Germans got their airborne. And they got some Luftwaffe they can build. And then the Russians got their ground support back, which they can use in favor of Polish or Romanians. And again, you know, very short turn. Well, not surprising given this is me. Sal pointed out a number of errors that I made in my initial playing. The big one is the weather. I just kind of skimmed through. I don't know what I did, but July through September is always good weather in all zones. So that invasion of Poland should have actually succeeded. We'll keep going with what we got. I don't know, maybe tweak things around a little bit. Hopefully I'll remember it when I come to the discussion of the game. It's kind of interesting to watch, though, what's happening with the Germans kind of getting tied down in this really horrible situation. I don't know how much value the rest of the playthrough is, because this should not happen. That is not in there. A few others. The Russians shifted a unit out of Sevastopol that they shouldn't have been able to. What I'm going to do to make up for that is I'm going to toss a unit here. The Brits were actually not allowed to go into France, so I'm going to shift some of those forces around. Don't know how much any of this... this guy was down here. They can't leave their home country until the policy's over. Minor things on those cases. The big one, though, that weather, man, that is going to fuck this whole game. But I don't feel really like restarting. I've got about a week and a half until CSW Expo. And at least you'll get to see some of the playing of the game, and we'll just assume, hey, there was just this horrible weather situation in Poland as soon as the Germans advanced. Terrible, terrible thing. Maybe we'll fudge something else in their favor, although I don't know if we'll be able to get anything that major. It's a pity, because I really wanted to explore the efficacy of this advance to the east, especially given that the Soviet reinforcements are fixed even when we go with this. Now, obviously, the Soviets are going to do a pretty good job of holding them off, I think, if Poland doesn't fall in that first turn. Poland falling in the first turn is not a guaranteed factor, though. And this is one danger to going east. Because the Polish... I've played the Polish scenario once over on the Case Blue map, and then on this map, and a viewer of mine has also mentioned he's tried to play this out like 3 times on the Polish scenario and never can get a German victory at the end. I didn't manage in the 2 that I did. It's not a trivial thing. Now, maybe it is if you really, really understand the system and understand attacking, but like I said before, the burden in this game goes to the attacker. The attacker has to figure out how to crack the defense in each case, and that's not necessarily terribly easy. I certainly would suggest that the more experienced player take the Axis if you're just jumping into a grand campaign. I'm not sure I could have taken Poland even with the good weather. I think I could have in this one. I found that as I mentioned in the intro, I think I failed on my attack on Norway, but that's really a luck-based thing. I got some bad weather there. The attack on France, that was going fairly well. It felt like I could do better, but it also felt like I was going to succeed within the time frame of the scenario. All right, that was just a little jump in there, and we'll do the December turn. Okay, well, now that we ended up getting, in December, poor weather in the mild zone, severe everywhere else, or in the moderate zone. Yeah, it's called mild zone, okay. That should give us an opportunity to make an attack on Moscow. But to start this off, we want to do some air strikes. Proper terms always elude me. Against the Soviet air power. Now we're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 within range that we can do this. We could have done this during the severe weather. It would have been limited effect, maybe not a big advantage. Now during the poor weather, there is still an effect, but it's on both sides, a -2 for attacking or defending. As far as I'm concerned, that's pretty much a wash, so I'm willing to engage in some quick attacks to try to knock out the Soviet air power. And then what we're going to do is we're going to make a move, see if we can take Warsaw, because right now Warsaw, the Polish will is only 4. If we can knock them out of the war, we're in much better shape. May make up for this schlagen about that we've been involved in. One thing is, Even if we won in Poland early, if we can do it this turn, that's as good, I think. Because if we had won in Poland early, we couldn't afford to strip troops off to go attack other nations. So, at least I think, maybe Lithuania or something. But I don't think we're too far behind the curve by doing that. But we've really gotten ourselves into this ugly schlag because of what I did with the weather. I mean, it's not a complete wash because you're taking penalties to the die roll instead of getting bonuses. There's a lot more room on the top of the chart than there is at the bottom of the chart. If I'm rolling a die, as I would be now, after taking some damage, at -2, +2 for being German, -2 for the weather, at 0 versus a Russian -4, -6, well, I'm going to average like a 3-point bonus and be able to knock them down, but it's not as guaranteed as if I had positives and they were, it's not as advantageous as if I had positives and they had zeros. And that's kind of what we're going to be seeing. Now, let's do another shot with that one just to see, just because we want to go through it. So it's +2 for the Germans and -2 to both. So the base is 0 and -2, but then the Germans get another -2, so they go down to the -2 level, and the Russians should be at like -6 there. That means on average I'm going to roll a 1 and the Russians are going to roll a 1. That's not going to do anything and we'll each take a sortie loss. But the thing is, even doing an attritional loss like that where we each take 1, well, that's getting closer to knocking the Russians out of being able to perform a sortie, not just a sortie, but also any ground support, which is what I'm really worried about here. So we'll go for it again. I'm not thrilled with the odds anymore. So yeah, we each get a 1, we each get 1 hit, and I need a 5 under here, and we'll put a 3 here. Now my next sortie is automatically going to, well, almost automatically going to knock the Russians down. So I'm going to hold off and go over to this one, which I've already started some combats with, and they haven't gone well for the Germans. At this point, we've gotten down to a point where, and I put these underneath, the rules kind of suggest you put them on top. Gotten down to -5s everywhere except this guy. This guy's out right now. But these guys, I can trade one off. Basically, a -5 means I'll be on this -5 table, and the Russians will be on the -7. Well, that means we're both going to roll 1s, and we're both going to take 1 hit. Again, I'm willing to do that to prevent the Russians from being able to use any support there. But the fact that I kind of didn't win the air combat very well weakens my chances of being able to break through to Warsaw this turn. But I might be able to make some ground. Those things that I missed that I don't think I mentioned from Sal's list was I can't use the Russian Air Force to protect the Poles. You can only protect your own nationality. Now that creates a real problem where the Brits, who have a powerful Air Force, aren't going to be able to give help to the French. And I think when I played my Fall of France scenario as a trial, I didn't pay attention to that either, or didn't realize that. There's a lot of little things that are very easy to forget. And there is a compendium of rules that are easy to forget, but I don't think that's one of them. The policies are definitely something that I find very hard to remember all the effects of. Lots of little special case type aspects to this game. There's no question there. And I have trouble recalling those kinds of things. All right. There's actually a non-cooperation policy too, which I think that's between the East and West more than anything else. Anyway, my attacks, the Germans managed to push so far 1 space forward using an assault here, and they followed up with mobile attacks. That killed a Polish unit. Now I only need 3 points, but that 3 points is awfully hard to find other than through Warsaw, and I'm just not seeing that easily. So I think I'm going to try to improve my front on Warsaw. This armored unit tried to cross this river to attack. Now, it used some air support. That got me to a +1, but the Russians threw in a tank unit. That got me to 0. I didn't succeed. Second time attempting, the Russians again committed a tank unit. That's these little aspect, or I don't know. Trying to remember the word from Korean War that they use because it seems to really appropriate for this, but it's not really working. Instead of using a real armored unit, you can throw these suckers in to just give you the quality of that. Anyway, the German attack was stopped with the second attempt. That was maybe a waste. I probably should have held that second one off for here as a modifier. Those guys are available next turn, though. Unlike, the ground support and stuff like that, where you roll a die, those guys are just always, they're going to be available one shot per turn. So I'm a little less concerned about using them, but they can only support the Russian units. All right, I'm looking at trying to launch an attack here, and I think I'm going to do an assault here simply because I'm not going to be able to get an assault on Warsaw in any way, and I don't think I'm going to be able to crack through it. The danger with the assault, well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I could actually 6, 7, 8. I could actually make 2 attacks if I do mobile attacks. What's my bonus going to be? I'm going to be a +2 for German. I've used my air unit already. -2 for the weather. It's going to be 2 rolls at even versus 1 roll at +1 because this will be thrown as the additional unit to the attack. I don't know. I really don't. I think I'm going to go for the assault, though. So I'll activate both of these units. I get to throw little assault chits down to indicate where they're heading. And then I resolve it. And that's going to cost me 2 more production. I think I'm keeping up with this. Well, this is a big attack. So let's see, +1. You have trouble with the red versus brown. I think, well, the brown Germans are more brown and Russians are red. Nah, it's the attacker defender. Russians don't really have anything left. They can't use this ground support because they're not allowed to use it in favor of forces that don't have air and tank units. So, I don't have the river bonus. I'm not sure which hex I want to choose as my attacking hex. I think I'm going to go with this one because that'll give me the most frontage on Warsaw itself, although that can be modified very easily. And we get a single attack at +1, I guess. That gives me a 5-3 that creates a retreat, and the Russians do not have any reason that they can stay there. Oops. So they have to go. Get these out of the way. I'll take the advance. I don't have to take the advance. There were a couple of cases where the Russians were pushing the poles around here where I didn't take it because it looked like it would throw me out of supply. But I think I'm about near the end of the line there. I may make some attacks here. This one doesn't do me any good. The best I can do is damage a Russian unit that can repair. This one, it might do me some good because the Poles don't have a lot of replacement points, and I have an advantage here because that counts as a reduced unit, so I'll probably make that attack just as an attritional thing. I'm having a hard time figuring out anything I can do for the Reds here. I launched an assault from these 3 units into this over here, and the Russians took a loss from that. I don't know if that was even a plausible attack. They could have done anything. The odds ended up -2. Or sorry, 0 for the attacker, +2 for the defender. Let's say I had rolled a 6 to a 3. Yeah, I could have forced a retreat potentially, and there might have been some advantage to pushing units forward on the line, gaining a little bit of ground. So it wasn't totally useless. And the thing is, while it couldn't gain me anything too important, actually that would have caused a step loss there because that guy can't retreat, that German in there. So that actually wouldn't have done much at all because a step loss doesn't really help me. Of course, I could have launched a secondary attack from here, but I don't think I'd have been interested in doing that. So I guess that was pointless. If there had been a retreat possible, gaining the ground would have been a worthwhile thing. But causing casualties in this situation means nothing. It's just production points. And everybody's got plenty to play with. So everybody's in supply. And I guess we'll go through kind of the economics of the replacements and then the diplomacy stuff. Wind up the turn. Germans got another diplomatic success. They took Italy again. It's got the biggest army, and they can migrate almost all of it to the East Front. That would be a major advantage to them. And actually, the Allies threw the chits back in because there was a success in there, and then the Russians drew a no event. So they're kind of behind the 8 ball now. If the Germans get another success, they can bring Italy into the war. Anything else here? The game's not over. Move there, and these things have to figure out where they belong. I don't know how well I have them sorted, but some of them, like the tanks, I know are going to show up back in here. This is the ground support. But those German units, I think, are going to be in the mobilization pool. And we'll start another turn. Weather ends up poor again where it counts. And really terrible in the southern area, which I think starts in here. The Germans open things up with peak. I don't like looking at counters too much, but with some counter air attacks, you can see I got a couple of sorties left here. I've used them all up here, and I've dropped the Russian sorties, so that they've got 6 sorties each, so they're not going to do anything to interfere with me. So I got a couple of +1s there because of the weather. In terms of counters, though, the Russians still have their tanks. Those are a couple more +1s. They got the a ground support kicking around for the Poles. The Romanians aren't on the line. And then, for the Germans, the only advantage I have over here in the counters, they can't use these ground supports, even if I tried to before, is this airdrop counter. Now that's worth a couple points, and I think I can use that in the poor weather. I have to look to make sure. But I'm a little disinclined to use it, because on a 6 it goes out of the game. I stop using paratroopers at all. And, you know, it feels like I'm not trying, maybe for the final attack on Warsaw, maybe it's worthwhile to do that. But it is so valuable at other times. So I'm a little leery of trying to do that. Still nothing in politics, other than diplomacy, which we've been seeing. The Russians aren't willing to invade some of these. Now, I did look it up, and they can gain these guys by capturing them. They add them to their production sphere and integrate them into the economy. Even though, it's kind of weird because they won't have the time to integrate that maybe is assumed in the process normally, but, well, there's a certain level of detail you really don't want to have to get into in any game. And I think trying to figure out that would go beyond the limit. I'm still worried about those Russian units being delayed for so long, though. All right, well, we'll continue with the German operations, see if they can punch themselves a victory yet. For my German attacks, it mainly failed across here. I made an assault, I think, on this unit. No, on this unit. And then used my armor to try to attack this one at a time, actually just doing mobile attacks, hoping that I could get a hole through there through multiple attacks and slip this infantry in here to do a big assault. I feel like it may be worth the 1 in 6 chance. I'm allowed to drop the paratroopers in as long as I'm within 3 of an air unit, and I am. So I'm going to go for that. That doesn't give me a +2. It gives the Poles actually a -2. And now the question is, do I want to do this, since I've got this committed here with this -2 on him, which cancels out the city? Do I want to do it with just an assault, or do I want to try mobile attacks? The mobile attacks would be kind of cool because I get multiple shots at it. Each one's going to cost me, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to hit. So I'll only get 2 shots at it. I think I'm going to go with the assault. I don't have very high hopes for this, or very high chances of this, I don't think. I've used up I've got 1 air attack available. So my total modifier will be +2 for the Germans, +3 for the assault with an additional unit. Let's see what this is going to work out like before I make the decision. So +3 for the assault there. I lose 2 for the bad weather though. And I gain 1 for my air unit. I don't have anything else that I can throw into this. For the Poles, well, that city and the river, I think they each count against you because the hex side counts one way and the city counts another. So that's -2 more for the Germans. Now going to the Poles, they're going to be, presumably, I'll throw the ground support into play. So that gives them a +1. That's not looking good at all. -2 for the paratroopers. Yeah, I'm not thrilled with the 0 -1. Did I throw the air unit in? I think I did. Let me make sure. 2, 3. Down to 1, down to -1, up to 0. Yeah. So it's going to be 0 versus -1 if I throw the paratroopers in. I have not a lot of chance there. So if we roll about even, 3 versus 3, it'll be 3 versus 2. So I've got to roll something like a 2-point benefit on my opponent for this to work. How much of a gain do I get from it? If I, and how much risk is there with the paratroopers? Basically, the paratroopers, there's a 1 in 6 chance I lose them for the rest of the game. How useful they're going to be in the East Front, iffy. Yeah, we'll try it. Okay. But this is a key battle here. Now, I haven't paid the production for this attack, and we've already calculated it out. I'm just going to turn these guys. They should have assault markers on them, and they should be hitting. But we'll do it this way, and I'll go, looks like 0 to -1. And if I outroll the Russian, and the Russians are indeed going to give ground support to the Poles. I do not outroll them well enough. 3 to 4, that's not going to do anything. We got 1 roll for the ground support. That's going to be out for 5 turns. 1, 2, 3. And then we got the ugly roll for the paratroopers. Yay, they're only out 1 turn. I'd be okay with anything except the 6. I just don't want to lose them. I don't know. But a higher cycle time, hey, that gives me another shot to lose them. Again, I don't see much to do with some of these others. This has been spent up. So all of my air has been used. I just don't see a whole hell of a lot I can do. I could shift this into place and try to gain some ground over here. But I don't see much point to that. The best I can do is gain ground. I can't really get anything that looks like it's of terrible value. It's not like I'm spending anything of terrible worth either, but this is kind of my reserve. I like him over here because he can exploit through if I cut a hole next turn. Of course, I can probably do that anyway. There's not a lot of hexes here, movements. Still fairly fluid even with the poor weather. It's only the attacking that's really tough. All right, we'll move on to the Russian side then. The Germans got themselves an additional airplane in the last turn, and now it's costing them. Sorry, I cheated. I was going to say $12. It's only costing them $9 a turn to recharge their planes. So they're not in as bad a place. What I was going to point out is their army is getting large enough and is being used enough that they were coming to where they had to make a choice, I thought, between mobilizing and, if they were at 6, if they spent 2 on mobilize, they wouldn't be able to do a diplomacy. So they could mobilize 1 unit and still do the diplomacy, which they would have chosen. But there's still enough padding in here. Now, that's one of the reasons not to just launch some kind of random attacks that aren't going to get you much. Eventually, it does come down to the point where your money starts being important. It's just right now. So right now, my army's beginning to get big enough that the German homeland is not quite enough to support everything I want to do. It's getting close. It's not there yet. But the smaller miners, they have kind of this problem all along. You kind of don't want to get them chewed up in battle because they will have some problems. 2 problems here. And this is something Sal points out in one of his design intents is, just sending those miners into the meat grinder in Russia, you couldn't do that historically, right? There were political concerns towards what you could and couldn't commit, and that's covered in this game in 2 ways. One is you have to pay the production points from the miner. So you've got to be channeling the points in there, and if they take too many hits, they're going to have to recuperate. The other is if they take losses in defense, not on attack. If they take a lost unit, but it's hard to lose a unit in attack. If they take a lost unit, I don't know if it's, yeah, I guess it's possible if you do really stupid stuff. But if they take a lost unit in defense, they lose a point of national will for that. And they don't have a huge amount around. Like, look at these. Here's my Poles. They're at 3. But my Romanians have taken no losses. They're only at 6. There's not a lot of will there to throw away units. And that's kind of a nice factor that just builds into the system very cleanly. At least, from not having sat through the playtesting of, actually coming out with making sure the system worked. It looks very clean from this point of view. I'm sure anytime a game's being designed, hey, that just didn't work. But, a lot of the pieces seem to fit together so far well. So, I guess I'm at that production phase because I bought off my, I got some poles to reproduce, or to replace. That's 1. I think it's just that 1. So there's a production. And then I'm going to have some units to bring on, and we'll come back after the political. I feel a little uncomfortable with how I read so far. I'm looking for the answer. The Italians being able to shift their entire army, -1 unit, off into Poland. But I did find something where I've been cheating. Cooperation limits. A country's counter cannot attack, move, retreat, trace a path, nor be placed into a different active country, with some restriction, loosenings of that requirement for supply and strategic movement and such not. So I'll be able to push the Italians into Poland through Germany. It's going to be a hard job. I'm going to have to do it slowly, so it's not like you're going to see the Italian army move here. But it does mean that I've been cheating with my Romanians. So let's get them back here. They're not going to be able to defend Russia for me either. I don't know how much good they're going to be for me. I thought they seemed like a really good thing. But let's just punch them back here. I'll try to figure out something I can do with them. If the Russians end up winning in Poland, we might be attacking into Hungary or something. But other than that, I think actually having these minor allies isn't terribly useful. What they're certainly not going to do is go commit themselves to defend Russia. It made sense to me to send them into Poland because there's no threat. But clearly, if a threat started to develop, I wouldn't want my Romanians, as the Romanian government, running around defending Russia. Of course, that probably wouldn't be a good move from my point of view either. So, as a player. But I'll keep looking to see if there's anything else limiting on the Italians, but I think the transfer rate being just the strategic movement rate is going to be pretty significant. Of course, there's also, I'm going to have to look to see whether or not I can make operations here in the Black Sea. That would change the nature of things if I can slip through there, or if that's considered part of Turkey, in which case it's neutral and I can't violate it. So that's another policy. I'm right in the right place for that. Somewhere. Neutral. It doesn't define that there, so, and I wouldn't expect it to. So I'll try to look. I highly doubt that I can sail through there without Turkey being a belligerent on one side or the other. That's the big thing that triggered all this, is Italy's joining the war. All right, so what I can see is that you can move along the coastlines. You can't move through a straighter canal of an enemy if an enemy unit occupies one of the hexes there. Neutral violation doesn't apply when you're moving along the coastline. It looks to me like the Italians are going to have free reign to start operating in the Black Sea. That kind of worries me, but we'll see. That's going to cause a whole world of hurt to the Russians. There's no question there. And this is really starting to enter kind of, the move east almost ensures that, a fantasy land of, yeah, that's not looking like World War II anymore. But that's kind of what I wanted here. And it's neat to have a game that allows me that opportunity. I know some people probably want to see it flow out how World War II always flows. But, I'm sure someone else will cover this as well. So, yeah, I'll get to my setup of the Italians, and I got some big worries for the Russians now. And now we're pushing into February of 40, and it's kind of strange. Some games, I've been labeling these videos, as I do with most modern ones, with a date, the year followed by the month. And I don't tend to do that as much with I think the pre-20th century games, for whatever reason. I'll have to look back and see if I do. But I know in a lot of games I just label things, hey, turn 1, turn 2, or video 1, video 2. For whatever reason in 20th century I seem more inclined to put the date on them. I certainly don't put the time so much on when I do say tactical stuff in the American Civil War, in part because I'm a little weird about using military time in a period when I don't think it was as common. Just weird little psychological issues. Okay, so the Allies threw the chits back in the cup to get a positive chit in there, and then the Russians drew a no event, which is a pity because I would have liked to have put a positive event in Turkey. That would help solve not the whole problem, but it would put me in the direction of the whole problem. I'm not in dire straits yet. There's a couple of things in my favor here. First of all, the Axis cannot do a naval invasion in the Black Sea until they pick up a surprise attack marker. That's required for invasions. The Axis also can only basically invade with one unit off a single surprise attack, if I recall correctly. The Allies are allowed to basically invade with 2 units in a sea zone that they throw a supplies attack on. Those surprise attacks are also very expensive. They cost something like 20 production to throw into the field. So that's not something we're going to see a whole hell of a lot of emphasis on. I've set up my Italians so that they're prepared for that naval invasion, but I'm not so sure I'm going to actually do it. 20 production's a lot, so that I can funnel things in. That'll give me time to get a Romanian down here and defend Constantia, or Constanta. You might say, well, what about the Russian Black Sea Fleet? Well, there's a convoy. That's not going to help much. But what there is that will help is this surface action chip. Now, how quickly does that recuperate? I don't see a time indicator on that, so I'm a little curious. I think they come back every turn, but I'm not positive of that. Submarines have a die roll. Luckily, there's pictures. I usually don't like pictures in a game, but when I'm looking for a specific counter, that's exactly how I need to do it. Unfortunately, I may be looking for a red counter, and I'm more interested in something that looks like a boat. I'm not seeing. There it is. Yeah. So it basically gets used as a warship when you place it, but when its activation goes away, yes. Actually, that should be on the counter. Yeah, that's sorties +1. So however many sorties it uses is +1 is how many turns you're going to be out of play after you use it. Essentially, you can use it for one operation, but if that's like an interception, it could involve multiple rounds of combat, one against, or some against any kind of escorts that there are, and then finally against the actual convoy that you're hitting. So if you're able to break the escort, then you can go after the convoy. So you could actually use up quite a few turns worth of naval activity trying to prevent an attack. On the other hand, well, if the surprise attack is put in here, the Italians can slip one navy in. I could intercept that. Then they could slip another one in, I think. I don't, well, yeah, no, I don't think so, because I think you reveal the hex that you're attacking before the interception happens. I'll have to look at how the timing is, because essentially, once I declare that I'm using that surprise attack for a naval invasion, I think I've got to succeed with it. Again, I'm not terribly certain about the rules. A game like this, I'm never going to have them all in my head, so I'm constantly going to be looking things up. One problem with that, of course, is it's harder to formulate your strategy. Certainly, if you study the game and play it a lot, you'll get pretty familiar with the rules, but I don't tend to do that with anything, hence how many videos that I crank out. All right, I think we're set. I got the Italian setup ready. Got the dice on the board for the next turn, and we're going to load this one up. Done a lot of talking there for no reason, right?